So we're going to gather around the word now. We've got a guest speaker with us speaking this morning, Dave Lawrence. He's spoken here before. He's speaking as our theme for June from the series of Letters From. And he picked a theme that talked about watch your step. Let's listen to him now as he speaks.
Hi church, thank you so much for having me with you or join you by video with you this morning. I count this a real privilege. Thanks Dave for the invite. I really do appreciate your trust in me, and whether you put that trust in me in the future, I am not sure. But here goes. Listen, I am going to whiz through this. The reason being is because I did this in two parts in our church. And the reason why I'm sharing it with you here today is because it's still in me. I did this at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. And I can't seem to let go of the points in this message here today. And so I entitled this message, Watch Your Step. Watch Your Step. And I take it from, I'm taking the whole of my talk today from Ephesians 5, verse 15 to 17. We'll catch on to that in a moment. But let me just read something through to you, which I found quite astonishing, and I'm hoping will be a challenge to you. This is an article by a guy called Harvest Williams, and I think he entitled this, Here's the Biggest Obstacle to Personal Growth. Here's the biggest obstacle to personal growth. Having counselled hundreds of people over 4 decades, I can't escape the fact that people seldom genuinely want to grow. I can't tell you how many clients and parishioners have had the solution to their pain within reach, but instead chose to prevent the healing that was readily available. When I began counselling people, I mistakenly assumed they would want to grow toward wholeness and maturity, but I have seen people repeatedly choose divorce over healing. I have seen them reject redemptive change in favour of superficial alteration that will do nothing to deepen their growth into wholeness. They remain stuck. Most people just want to try to get by. They settle for a short-term, stopgap solution that avoids healing and fails to address the deep hurt and losses of life. No matter what our natural response might be, I am convinced that we are created to grow, even though much in our lives work against that growth. Why is this fundamental aspect of life so often thwarted? Why are so few of us willing to do the necessary work to push through the barriers that impede the way to maturity? The process of growing into wholeness is messy and brings its own discomfort. Deep in the psyche of the first world perspective, it seems that our built-in urge to grow is stalled by the more immediate desire to be comfortable, to be safe, to be sure and certain. In other words, we want to be in control no matter what it costs us. And we will see it, and as we will see, it costs us dearly. When the pursuit of comfort determines how we live, a move to grow toward wholeness will merely be tolerated and endured, perhaps in the wake of a crisis, but it will not be sought out. And even when we experience a moment of genuine growth toward maturity due to loss, grief, betrayal, or some other setback, we hope the process of growth will soon be over. We want more than we want more than ever to return to the seeming ease of being in control of our life. We want We want to complete the process of suffering so we can put it behind us and return to the patterns and routines that pass for safety and comfort. We are driven to resolve issues, and usually it's a good thing to want closure. When you sign up to take a class, you want to complete it. When you enter a race, you want to cross the finish line. However, this mindset overlooks the fact that we are alive. And as long as we are alive, things can't be finished. There is no end point. There is no graduation ceremony that certifies that we have arrived. Living things are always growing. If they are not growing, they are dead. Growth is a reality. While quick resolution remains a tantalizing fiction, we create our own confusion when we overlay the idea of completion on an organic growth. It will never work, but that doesn't stop us from trying. The reality of life is that you can't force any outcome to conform to your will. My dog serves as a simple example. She will never stop barking at schools, no matter how much it annoys me. Working with a living being calls for an entirely different set of interactions and large amounts of acceptance. Gosh, I hope you kind of understood that. You may need to rewind it and listen to that again. But for me, the staggering thing of a man who has fully experienced his counsel for 4 decades has come to the sad conclusion that we don't want growth, we want comfort. That's a staggering fact. People make decisions purely because of comfort. They're not willing to pay the price. The Bible is so clear. In the New Testament, it talks about how if you want to build a house, do you not work out if you have enough money to build it? Because otherwise, you will look foolish if you only get halfway. There is a cost. The Bible has never, ever tried to hide that fact. There is always a cost. In fact, can I make this really plain? Jesus couldn't have put it any simpler. He says, take up your cross. And that is not to be done on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or even a yearly basis. It is a daily thing. It is a daily cost. I'm asking you a little question. After hearing what I've just read, are you willing to genuinely grow? Or are you just wanting to remain in the comfort zone? Be honest. Are you wanting to really grow? Really? Well, I've got good news for you. There's a cost. Please be aware that there are and will be challenges. Please be aware that personal growth will be sacrificial. But I believe that growth comes by having the right focus. And this is so important. One of the things that's grabbed me over recent weeks and months, especially over this COVID period, it's kind of sorted us out a little bit, hasn't it? It's been a tough time. But it's kind of caused us to really work out in our own lives what really matters. Unfortunately, for some, they realised that during this time that the time that they spent before this COVID crisis is that they were invested in things that really didn't matter at all. Therefore, if we are going to grow, and grow in the right areas, if we are going to be productive, our focus is paramount. The Bible reading I would have told you is from Ephesians, is a short reading, and this is what it says. It says, this is why I call it watch your step. In verse 15, it states this: so watch your step. Use your head. Make the most of every chance you get. These are desperate times. Don't live carelessly, unthinkingly. Make sure you understand what the Master wants. You see, simple observations of these is that we need to hear what God is saying to us. Because we do indeed live in difficult times. I'm sure you don't need me to convince you of that. These last 15, 16 months, folks, have been the toughest, probably, maybe, in your lives. Some of you may have suffered loss. And you know what? You may not have been in a position, whoever that person was who may have passed away during this particular time, you may not have been able to say your goodbyes because of all the various restrictions. Maybe you have found it tough because of isolation, because you've been stuck in your house, been stuck in your flat, and there's nowhere else to go because you have to self-isolate. Folks, that is almost torture. Folks, there are other issues. People who are on low wages, only getting 80% because they're on furlough. Boy, when you're on low wages, folks, every single penny counts. Now to have 20% reduction, whoa. We've been living in times of crises. It's difficult. Do you know what? And even now, as some of the guidelines have eased, the restrictions, shall I say, we're still living in a time of uncertainty. Is my job secure? People are also feeling unloved, overwhelmed, isolated by the situation. Folks, we are living in difficult times. Do you know what? I've encouraged my church here that even though circumstances are beyond our control, our destiny is not controlled by those circumstances. Our destinies are controlled by Him. Folks, that one simple fact should give you some hope today. If we're not careful, we will be focusing on the wrong things, which will prevent us from growing and making the best use of our time and our abilities, because we focus on fear. Fear cannot be your dominating thing. I remember we had the privilege of having, who you will know, Dave Wells, and I asked him to set up a preach. It was really good, and he stated this. He stated that he was reading up, and he said the 21st century has already been dubbed, listen folks, we're only just into this 21st century. And it's already been dubbed, it's already been named the century of fear. What a staggering statement that is. Folks, there are times we just feel as if everything's uncertain. Folks, I have no desire to do this, okay? None whatsoever. I certainly appreciate the skill. But if you ever seen the circus and all that, and you see the trapeze artist, isn't it a wonderful skill? However, I have no desire to do it. But life feels just like the trapeze artist, from the point that here they are, they let go of one swing to turn and to grab the other swing. And life feels as if you're in between the two swings. You've just let go of one, and you're trying to reach out for the next, and you're not sure if there's a safety net underneath. Folks, can I just say this to you? When you are in that position, not that I tried it, and I repeat, I have no desire to do it. But folks, losing focus whilst you are in mid-air is the wrong time to lose focus. Because if you're not careful, you will miss the very swing that's your lifesaver that's coming towards you. If you start looking over there and looking, if you look down and you see there's no net, and you see over there the crowd watching going, you know, that's the wrong time to lose focus, because you need to focus on the swing. How can we remain focused? How can we watch our step? Well, the text gives us answers, which is really good. And I've got to be quick. Number one, mind the gap. Be very careful then how you live, not as the unwise, but as the wise. So watch your step, it says in the message. Use your head. You know, I love funny clips. I think Dave knows this. I have a collection of them. And if you have any funny clips, folks, send them through to me. I mean, you know, there's nothing funnier than sometimes somebody else's misfortune. And I know you're probably shocked that I I'm saying that. Here I am, a pastor, like you think like that. But there's something funny when you see someone trip over something. It's just so hilarious. It's just weird. I like Miranda, the comedian. You know what? Have you ever seen some of her series? And some of the funniest moments is when she falls. It's just so funny. There are some who trip over because they're simply not looking. There are others who trip over because they're multitasking. There are others who fall over because they're just simply rushing. You guys will know this more than I do, but I think it's Bank Underground Station. The actual station's on the bend. And so when a train comes in and arrives at the station and then the doors open, there is a gap between the train and the platform. And then this automated message that comes over the tannoy says, mind the gap. Mind the gap. Do you know what staggers me about that story or that illustration? Simply this. He doesn't just say it once. He doesn't just say, as soon as the door opens, mind the gap. And then that's it. It keeps repeating itself. Mind the gap. Mind the gap. And I think it says it at least 3 or 4 times. Why? Because people still don't pay attention. People who are falling in between the platform and the train because they're on their phone, or they're simply not looking, or they're focused on the wrong thing. And that is one of the reasons why the tannoy message comes over and over and over again. I've discovered it's so easy to lose focus. You know what? Oftentimes in my own life when I trip, it's usually because I'm just in a rush. There are times I will just make snap decisions and then wonder why it all goes pear-shaped. Folks, it's important to watch your step. I engaged in a partnership not so long ago that cost our church. I did it with the right motives. My heart was, I'm thinking, folks, this could be a good evangelistic opportunity. What's wrong with that? But I soon found out to my own peril. It was the wrong thing to do. I did something that Joshua and the people did. Remember, is it the Gibeonites? They came and they pretended to be from a far-off place. And, you know, Joshua and his men must have been rushing, thinking, okay, we've got a vision. This is it. We're so focused on this. And you guys, okay, we'll take on board what you say on face value. And they made a pact with them, only to discover that they were not from a far-off land. They were actually next-door neighbors. They were part of the group that they had to, that God was telling Joshua to get rid of. But out of rush, thinking, we don't need to involve God in this. We can just go ahead. Guess what? The Bible tells us that the Gibeonites were a thorn in the side of the Israelites. All because they failed, and I think the Bible says this, they failed to inquire of God. Simple sentence. They failed to inquire of God. That's what I did. I failed to inquire of God. I just said, this is really good. This is fine. Blah, blah, blah. This is going to be a great opportunity. This can have a mechanism. And the spin-offs. All because I rushed. Do you know what? We go before we're ready. We go before we're ready. We speak before we have anything to say. We teach before we're taught. And we build high before we build deep. And then we wonder why our lives crash. Do you know what happens when you hurry? You don't watch where you're going. And you focus. And you lose your focus. The answer to hurry lies not in buying a planner or getting an organizer, but in the ancient words of the psalmist. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46, verse 10. When we slow down enough to get God involved, we discover that he can do more through us than we can ever accomplish on our own. Secondly, grab the moment. And I've got to be quick. Grab the moment. Making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. he puts it this way: use your head. Make the most of every chance you get. These are desperate times. You see, the words of Paul, they were, when he wrote that particular passage, when he was writing that in prison, he was living in desperate times himself. He was imprisoned and he was chained to a soldier. Not only that, you just have to do your own research. I can't go into it right now. I have another 10 minutes with you this morning. But where he was, it was a city. Ephesus was a central commercial city, probably one of the most central locations in the world. It was involved in all sorts of false stupidity, false religions and so forth, and it was incredibly promiscuous. So here he was writing about his time and the desperate times and all the things. In fact, one commentator said that the morals of the people of that time were lower than animals. Gosh. That's why Paul was so desperate. That's why he said, we are living in desperate times. Folks, is it not true that those same words could be said today? Difficult days, difficult times. But you know what? The problem is these difficult days and times could cause us to be tempted into despair. It will encourage us to give up. We can't do it because the day is dark and there's nothing to be done. What can we do? Is it really worth it? In fact, I read today in, is it Colossians? In my daily read, I can't remember, my brain's gone. I was really struck by something. I've read it so many times. I think it's in the last chapter of Colossians, I think it says in verse 17 or 19, he says, tell so-and-so to finish the task or the ministry that God called him to. What a strange thing to read. It wasn't, come on guys, you can do it. It was like, I'm telling you, do it. Finish the task. Yes, the times might be difficult. It might be hard. But God has put a calling upon your life. Get on with it. And folks, that's my charge to you. It's not to be distracted by the externals. Folks, it's not the externals that govern our lives. Paul was in prison. Prison wasn't anything like it is today. It was dire, it was dark, it was dank, it was brutal. And yet, folks, what did he do? Paul was focused. I want to talk about that a little bit more later. I, for one, refuse to think like that. Sometimes we give up too soon. But I'm here to make a difference, even if it's to one person. That's why it's important to be the best that you can be. That's why personal growth is important. It's so as you can be the best that you can be for whatever situation God may put you in. You know what? The thing that makes it difficult for us to live as Christians are the very things that cause us to shine. My old pastor used to say this. He says, if you want to look at the beauty of a diamond, put it against the dark background. Folks, we, as Christ followers, should shine and be attractive to people because of the background that exists behind us. It's a dark time, but folks, it's Christ in us that should cause us to grow and to glow and to be bright in this darkness, and for that beauty to be apparent to others. When the world around us seems to be going haywire, we have an incredible opportunity to display the life-changing power of Jesus Christ. To put simply, the darker the night, the brighter the light shines. I've got so much more to say. Thirdly and lastly, and this one is probably where my main burden lies, live with purpose. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is, Ephesians 5:17. He says in the message, don't live carelessly, unthinkingly. Make sure you understand what the Master wants. I have a little saying that I often say in our church here, that folks, we are here on purpose and with a purpose. We're not here by accident. We are here on purpose and with a purpose. The mere fact that you are breathing, folks, means that God has a purpose for your life. Folks, shouldn't that fill you with hope today? Yes, folks, I know you have some difficulty. Yes, absolutely. Folks, I want to tell you, I'm not sitting here telling you that I have no issues myself. I can keep you here for a while talking about some of the issues that I'm facing. Some of those issues from up until the early hours of the morning. Some of those issues, folks, has involved the police. Don't worry, I'm not being arrested. But folks, it's involved the police. Why, folks? Because some of the issues. So, folks, I am living in the real world just like you. Despite all of those things, folks, I am here on purpose and with a purpose. And my life should reflect that. For our church, I played 7 minutes, an extract from the last speech ever given by Dr. Martin Luther King. It was his last speech on April the 3rd, 1968. And if you can, look on YouTube and listen to it yourself. Not because it was probably the greatest speech or preach he ever gave. It was very good. But the thing that really hit me about that speech was this. He knew that his life was coming to an end. There were all sorts of threats against him. And in fact, this is the thing that really stuck out in my mind. When you listen to the first, I think, 3 or 4 minutes of that speech, Martin Luther King kind of goes on this sort of travels through history. And he said he's kind of having this conversation with God. He said to think, God, if I was to come back at any certain time of history, I mean, could it have been this when this happened? And the things he was reciting were significant events that took place in history. Very, very, very significant events. Events that you and I wouldn't mind being a fly on the wall for, to have witnessed, to have experienced it. And he goes through event after event after event. And then he says this. He says this. This is the thing that blows me away. He says, even though those things were significant events, I would choose to come back in exactly the same time as now. It struck me because, folks, you need to understand, he said this just a few years after he was stabbed. And they say that he was within millimeters of losing his life. A deranged woman stabbed him, just missing the main artery to his heart. And the doctors and nurses, they had to fight hard to save his life. Folks, he would have been beaten. He would have been mistreated. He would have been spat upon. He would have been, folks, the experiences that he would have had, you and I would never, ever have wanted or desired to have experienced. Not only was his life at risk, his family's life was at risk. Do you know what? Even on the way to that speech, he was. They bought a ticket on a plane for him to get him there. The plane was delayed by several hours. Do you know why? Because overnight they had to place guards over that plane. And then they had to search it numerous times. And eventually, when the plane got off, the pilot, one of the first messages that the pilot stated was this: I am sorry for the delay of our flight. It's been delayed because of a particular passenger who was on our flight. And so we wanted to make sure of your safety. Can you imagine the other passengers looking around at him and saying, yeah, it's all your fault. Folks, he could have easily have said, I would have rather have come back a different time. He could have said, I want to come back at a later time when most of the fight of racism is over. But he could have said any other time, because if he had said any other time, he would have been able to have avoided the very hardships that he went through. And yet, he said, I'd rather come back in exactly the same time. Meaning that he would have had to have faced those same hardships. Why am I say this? Because he was a man of purpose. He lived with a purpose. He knew why he existed. Do you know what? I love the Apostle Paul. I can't go into this anymore, really, because of time. I used to think Paul was a bit of a show-off. I have a problem with Paul. I think I might have shared this before with you some time ago. But it used to almost offend me when I used to read the letters. And he used to start off by this: I, Paul, called of God to be an apostle. I thought, what a show-off. How many of you write a letter to family or to friends and say, can you imagine Dave Food writing to me? Hi Dave, I want you to know, Dave, that I, Dave Food, can call upon my life to be an apostle. Who starts a letter off that way? You say, hi, how are you? Hope you're okay. How's family? No, Paul. Me, called. I don't know why I do it in an American accent. Please forgive me, anyone who's American watching. I'm not trying to hear me. Oh, call of God. I love Paul now. Because what he was saying is, I know exactly who I am. I know exactly my purpose. And I'm living it. And really, he was saying it as a way of encouragement to you and to me, that we are people. We are men and women of purpose, no matter what the circumstances. And folks, only look into the background of Paul to see how many times he was shipwrecked, how many times he was beaten, how many times he was whipped, how many times he was in prison. And yet, folks, he says this is all to serve the greater purpose. Darker the times, the brighter the light. I've got to finish. We're living in days of emotional conflict. But I want to encourage you to mind your step. I want you to grab the opportunities and to live with purpose. You are not determined, or your path is not determined by the circumstances. It is determined by him. And you are here on purpose and with a purpose. There is so much. I've got to stop. God, I pray for those who are watching this, for your blessing to be upon their lives, and that they will take heed to what's been said. And I pray that no matter what the circumstances may be, and listen, God, they're real. Some of the experiences that we are all facing are difficult. They're trying. But I am so grateful for the promises of God, because you say that you will never leave us and you will never forsake us. And despite all of those things, God, we can still run the race and run it well. God, help us today to not be focused on the fear. But I pray that our lives will be focused upon you and faith to rise within us. We ask this for the glory of your name. In Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you again. Sorry I've run over.